Shalom everyone, this is February 20, 2018, and I have another lesson in the New Testament is Fake series. This lesson is titled Leviticus 17. And here I'm talking about obviously what is in the chapter I just mentioned and taking a look at what I see as the setup for the Calvary sacrifice, and I'm showing from in the Torah that the sacrifices I'm seeing are just really setting the stage for us to accept Calvary. I found this out just by rereading the Bible and considering again what I found in the early chapters of the book of Genesis. Because I've been looking a lot with the creation story and the Garden of Eden story, and I'm realizing that some things don't really add up. And I've told you before, I'm rereading the scriptures because some things just weren't making sense to me, especially when I read certain things in history that don't really seem to have anything to do with the scriptures, but the scriptures may hint something or touch a little bit. So I'm wondering, why is this found in history but the scriptures say nothing about it? Or why is the scripture so strong in this but we can't find certain things in history to match it correctly? So I started to search, and I realized that and it has so far been helpful to me that the creation story and the Garden of Eden story form the basis of everything else that comes later in the scriptures, so that I have decided that everything I study in the scriptures, meaning every doctrine I study in the scriptures, I must go back to the creation story and the Garden of Eden. Very little is said about the Garden of Eden, very little is said about Adam and Eve, but they hold enough information to shed light on future things. The Garden of Eden cannot be the basis upon which the entire Torah rests, and it have so little to do with what comes after. So that if there are truths regarding the patriarchs or Israel later on, and captivity and so on, then we must, or I at least, must consult the opening chapters of Genesis, as I just mentioned. I mean, even when you deal with the slave trade of the Israelites and our downfall and this people in the scriptures who were just kicked out of their land, again, you can run back to the Adam and Eve story. That, as some have pointed out already, even though it wasn't my main focus, but I appreciated learning of it from so many others who have said that the Garden of Eden is somehow like talking about the nation of Israel. And so when you look at the captivity or the banishment of Israel from their land, and they're scattered into other lands, even so you can find that story of the banishment or punishment of Israel kind of reflected in the banishment of Adam and Eve as they were expelled from the garden. So you see what I'm saying? You can run back to the opening chapters of Genesis for different stuff to understand a little bit more of what's going on as you try to process what you're reading in the scriptures. Now, Leviticus chapter 17, I'm not really going to go verse by verse through it, but I'll give enough information for you to understand it. That when you're looking at Leviticus 17, different things come to mind. Of course, the sacrificial system and life of the flesh is in the blood. We've heard that so much. And instructions of how to slaughter animals for the Creator, who seems to me like he made them to flourish along with the plants and trees and with people. Notice that death itself is a curse. Death itself is a curse. So if death, is a curse, why is it that it just becomes a normal part of worshiping God or the God of Israel on a regular average day, on a regular, ordinary, holy day, high holy day, or Sabbath and so on. You got to kill, 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 and slaughter the animals, when death itself is a curse. So then the Israelite is being instructed by this supposed God of Israel to participate in or carry out acts of a curse just to love their God. I mean, why not tell Israelites to go for a walk in the park, or go for a walk in nature, and to contemplate, like how he could have made all these plants and flowers and how the trees grow. So your mind would just be caught up in a rapture of how the Creator, with all his wisdom and mystery of how he functioned, created all these things, and that would draw the Israelite closer to the Most High. When you are that connected with the Most High, you don't have time to be hurting your brother and doing all kinds of injustice, because your heart is being drawn away, raptured away in the mysterious things of the Creator. Instead, he tells you, kill these animals that I made and participate in a curse of death, which is anti-Torah, as far as life is concerned. So you see what I'm trying to say? So Leviticus 17 is suspect to me. Later on, at some point, I'm going to be talking about, of course, not now, but I mean in a later lesson, about the different people that say some tampering has happened with the Bible and with the Torah, and so on. I will take a look at that myself. No rush to get to that. I'm already comfortable doing that anyway. But I still have a lot to learn for that point. This doesn't stop me from embracing the Torah. As much of it as I've learned so far, it seems that there really is a Torah, a real teaching from the Creator. So this doesn't threaten me, because if someone has messed with the other holy books on earth for the different religions and different peoples that are on the earth, I don't see why our book would have passed through their hands and they would not have done something to it. If it is the most powerful book, and if this children of Israel are the most powerful, most blessed by prophecy people on earth, why would they not do something to the book of instruction that these people have, that they feel they must live their life by? Why would they not have done something to the book? So, if I look here now at Jeremiah chapter 32 and verse 35, I'll read from the KJV and then I'll read from another version here. And I'm showing you the sacrifices, how it built up, because animal sacrifice and human sacrifice, they kind of, one gives way to the next, right? And they certainly show up on Calvary. It seems that we're more concerned with with animal sacrifices, and then human sacrifice comes in to the picture, and we don't hear much about that. We just hear a lot about the animal sacrifices, and some of us in Babylon want to go buy a lamb for the next Passover and whatever, and if you don't eat it, I guess you're going to be forced to eat it because, well, I'm sorry, until the Creator tells me that I should do that, where he appears to me outside of the confines of a book of Torah that has passed through the hands of our enemies, until the Creator shows up and tells me that, then in the future I will not be participating in sacrifices that have me killing and sinking my teeth into animals, that I got to put some sauce on it to try to make me stomach it, because since I stopped eating meat, it's probably a year and a half, nearly 2 years now, and I'm happy about that. I've never looked back. I don't miss it. And so, since I've turned away from it, it's like I just can't handle it. Just the thought of it is just like crazy. And it's funny that I mentioned the thought of it, because hear what the scripture says here in Jeremiah 32 and verse 35. And by the way, I was trying to say, if I have to be a part of Israel to make it back to the land and go kill and eat animals, and that is just required, I guess I'm not going to make it. But if I'm not going to make it, I'm going to help somebody else think some better thoughts, because maybe they'll develop these thoughts better than I. But if it is a requirement to go back to the land, to go back to Jerusalem and go do a Passover where I'm going to be eating a wild animal, I guess some of us, like myself, just won't make it. Just won't make it. But it says here, Jeremiah 32 verse 35, and they built the high places of Baal, which are in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to cause their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire unto Molech, which I commanded them not, neither came it into my mind that they should do this abomination to cause Judah to sin. So he says it didn't even come into his mind. It's like, it's just really kind of odd. Now, if I look here at this other version, this is the New English Bible with Apocrypha that I've mentioned before, just for different wording. It says here, they set up their loathsome idols in the house which bears my name, and so defiled it. They built shrines to Baal in the valley of Ben Hinnom. So again, the worship of Baal included the worship of many gods, because remember, Baal just included a lot of other gods. But it included animal sacrifices and also human sacrifices. So when you read of Molech, which I just read, and Chemosh, these gods are having animal sacrifices and human sacrifices also done. And this culminated in, might I call it, the master human or flesh sacrifice at Calvary, which, as I've pointed out before earlier in this series, the New Testament is Fake series, that Calvary was a Molech sacrifice. Molech. And Israelites, as well as the entire world, are taught to worship Molech without understanding that Calvary, or Golgotha, the place of the skull, so fitting a name because after you sacrifice and kill humans in sacrifice, you're left with bones like skull. So yeah, Calvary and this Calvary Messiah was a Molech sacrifice. So it says they did this in the valley of Ben Hinnom to surrender their sons and daughters to Molech. Israelites were doing not just animal sacrifices, but people sacrifices, human sacrifices, their sons and daughters, just like the other heathen nations around them. Where is the set apartness of the nation of Israel? And I let me skip that and just move on for time's sake. To surrender their sons and daughters, it was no command of mine. The Most High says, I never commanded a sacrifice for sons and daughters, but he's going to command in like Isaiah 53 and other places, and Isaiah 7 and other places, he's going to command a sacrifice of his own son. He says sons and daughters were never a command of his as far as sacrifice is concerned. So any son of Israel is not commanded by the Most High to be sacrificed. So if Jesus or Yahushua, as you guys say, he is from the tribe of Judah, was commanded by the Most High, then he's a son of the Most High, and he's a son of Judah, and a son of the kingdom of Judah, and so on. How could he be commanded? The Most High is telling you here by the prophet Jeremiah, he has nothing to do with such things. He never commanded any such sacrifice, nor did it even enter my thought. So he never even conceptualized such a thing. That stuff was conceptualized in the minds of the heathen to do this abominable thing and lead Judah into sin. The Most High is saying, I wasn't leading Judah into sin to do this kind of stuff. And he sure wasn't leading the Israelites into sin at Calvary either. Now, the reason I teach these things is because the Most High says, the scripture says he requires truth in the inward parts. And so, the teachings just can't be based on lies. So obviously we got to just understand some stuff there. Look at now 1 Kings chapter 11, 7 to 8. First Kings 11, 7 to 8. And where is chapter 11, verse 7 to 8? This is saying here, then Solomon did what was wrong in the eyes of the Most High, and was not loyal to the Most High like his father David. So right away you get the understanding that Solomon is in the wrong. So what we usually understand then is that if somebody is going astray, they're usually doing right plus wrong, because you're not going to fit into the mold of Israel or look like it if you are doing it completely wrong. There's going to be some right things, but it's mingled with some bad things. He said he did not do what was right like his father David. He built a hill shrine for Chemosh, which is like Moloch I just said, and loathsome god of Moab on the height to the hill shrine of Chemosh, the loathsome god of Moab on the height to the east of Jerusalem, and for Moloch, like we just read of, the loathsome god of the Ammonites. Thus he did for the gods to which all his foreign wives burnt offerings and made sacrifices. The Lord was very angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away. Now, this is in 1 Kings chapter 11. His heart has turned away because of his wives. Now look, when you read just a couple chapters earlier, like in about maybe 1 Kings chapter 8 or so, and if you read from actually chapter 5 to chapter 8 or 9, it talks about Solomon building a place for the Most High Temple and then building his own house. And then it says that he offered sacrifices, so a lot of sacrifices. But what's going on is that just a couple of chapters before this chapter 11, you're seeing the build-up here that Solomon was already taken away in his heart by his wives that were from other nations who were sacrificing unto other gods because their hearts were not towards the Most High and did not know his Torah in their hearts. So if you read now and say to me, but he was, after he made the sacrifices, the temple, he sacrificed a lot of animals to the Most High. So how can you say animal sacrifice is wrong? It's telling you what's going on here. Because his heart was taken away, he did these things. And it's telling you that while he was building the temple to the Most High, his heart was already in the wrong place. So by the time he was offering the sacrifices, his heart was already in the wrong place. So that's how he could have offered all those animal sacrifices. And then it just revealed later on in chapter 11 that his heart was already gone from the Most High because of the ways of his wives from other nations who worshipped other gods. So in 1 Kings chapter 8 and about verse 5, it says, then the elders of Israel all came, because he gathered the elders of Israel. They came, the priests and so on, in the ark of the Most High, and carried it to the tent of the presence of all the sacred furnishings of the tent. It was the priests and the Levites together who carried them up. King Solomon and the whole congregation of Israel assembled with them before the ark, and they sacrificed sheep and oxen in numbers past counting and reckoning. So he did this, and then just in chapter 11, just about 3 chapters later, it's telling you that the man's heart was gone from the Most High. That's how he could have offered all these sacrifices, because he was already gone. So when you read of Solomon doing these things, his heart was already gone from the Most High. Remember, like I've told you so many times before, Israel didn't just get up one morning and all thousands or a couple million of them didn't just say, we're just going to stop following the Most High and just do all this stuff. They were already like that, but they did it gradually. And so one thing built upon another, one thing built upon another. Slowly and gradually they dropped off stuff and they became corrupt. So it's not like Solomon was righteous right here and offering the sacrifices righteously, and then in chapter 11 he just suddenly stopped following the Most High. No, he's been with his wives for a long time. I think about 900 wives or 600 wives and 300 concubines or something like that. So he was with them for a while and learned their ways slowly after time. And then he was doing these different things, and then at the end now he just told you the man's heart was corrupt. So you would have to trace back throughout his life to see the corruption. Because that's how people grow closer to the Lord. They slowly learn of the ways of the Most High, and they learn the commandments, and they learn whatever. Just like when in Christianity, you learn more things and more things as you follow, quote-unquote, Jesus, as you say, and you learn the scriptures properly and so on. It's the same way when people are going astray. They learn the wrong thing, and they go slowly, slowly, slowly. You notice with Eve in the garden, the serpent talked to her. She didn't just admit it to just, yeah. Because sometimes people will tell you that Adam didn't even fight back or so. But you see, Eve, she was just trying to like have a conversation because slowly her mind was being taken away from the commandments. Because she's trying to process it so slowly. That's how you go downhill. You slowly process it until she eventually ate. That's it. When the scriptures are teaching how Israel went astray, they didn't just see nations come and teach them the wrong thing. No, slowly they did. And it's the same way when people are trying to drag you down to lead you astray. They gradually, slowly teach you the wrong thing until you go astray, and next thing you know, you're just way out. So now, if you look at in Genesis chapter 2, I'm not going to read all these scriptures because we all know them, just for time to not make the video too difficult to upload. In Genesis chapter 2, we read of the Most High telling Adam, this is, and again I told you that Genesis and Adam and Eve and so on has to be consulted. They have to be consulted for the basic premise of what is Torah. The precepts. So in the precepts he tells you these greeneries and fruits and so on, this is and herbs, this is going to be your food. Later on now, they tell you in Genesis chapter 9 that the Creator says you can start eating meat, which goes along with animal sacrificing, because animal sacrificing went along with meat eating. And I just brought a book today that's shedding some more in light on all this animal sacrificing and meat eating, and one day I'm going to get into that. I haven't read it yet, right? But I already bought it. Now it says now, because how can the Most High, how can the Scripture says, I think in Malachi 3:6, the Most High doesn't change, but He's going to say the herbs and so on are for your food, and says nothing about a precept to Adam of eating meat and killing animals to eat them. But later on, puts in a precept in the life of Noah. And you tell me that that is not a change, and you read the scriptures and said it's true that the Most High doesn't change. Can't you see someone has given us some wrong teaching? Something is wrong, or the Torah itself is wrong. So, the scripture also says, remember the days of old and the years of many generations. Now listen to this. In the generation of Adam, if you got to remember the generations of old, then in the generation of Adam, eating meat of animals was not in the Torah, and the Most High did not command it in the quote-unquote oral Torah. If you want to say it, Adam never had that oral Torah telling him to eat the animals and eat meat. But Noah gets an oral Torah telling him to do that? Oh, come on, people. Don't mess with me too much with this. Because I don't have time for that foolishness anymore. I'm trying to find the Creator, right? I'm trying to find the Most High. So in the oral Torah that Adam was given, he never had any precept or teaching or Torah instruction of the Most High saying to eat the meat of animals. So that is a heathen instruction if Adam were to have heard of it. If somebody would walk up to Adam, if there were other people there to tell him and say, oh, but Noah's going to get whatever. Adam would be like, what? How can Noah in the future get that kind of instruction? If Noah had a dream that there was going to be a patriarch later after him called Noah, sinking his teeth into animals and eating them and so on, and teaching people that you can eat meat, Adam would be like, wait, but my precepts, and I met the Most High directly, don't say anything about eating animals and sacrificing them and all, or just simply eating them. So he'd be like, no, Noah, a future patriarch, oh, the world must have gone downhill and Noah must have gotten corrupted. He'd be like, no, that's just a bad dream, that's a nightmare. That's how Adam would probably have treated it. Because to see somebody sinking their teeth into an animal and saying he's a patriarch, Adam would be like, Eve, I got a nightmare. My first nightmare on earth. Adam would probably start praying about the Most High just like helping us out, because he'd be like, no, the world is going downhill faster than we know it. So, it would just really be strange. But anyway, there was no such thing, right? So in Noah's early life, no meat in Torah after the flood. That would have been normal. Instead, we find there was meat eating after, and some are going to tell you that people were eating meat before the flood, and was one of the reasons why the flood came to destroy man, because they became corrupt. And Torah teachers teach that. That means if it is corruption to eat meat, before the flood, and it was one of the reasons why people got destroyed. And that's what they're telling me. I want more information on that myself, but if that's correct, and it seems to me, then how can meat eating be one of the reasons why the earth is judged in a flood, and then after the flood is done, the Most High says, go ahead and do corruption again and eat some more meat? I just destroyed the world for eating meat, and I want you to come off the boat and eat meat and be as corrupt as they were before. Does that make any sense to you out there? You see, I know a lot of you are scared because you're like 20, 25 years teaching the Torah. You just left the Christian church. What are you talking about? You don't know anything about Torah. But you are afraid because you thought the Most High's truth started and ended with you. No. The Most High's truth was here before you. It's going to be here after me. And he's going to tell it to anybody and share it to anybody who he's dealing with. So you got to stop looking at people as just being competition and so on. No, we are trying to find the Most High. We're trying to find the instructions that bring back the earth to where it really should be. That's what we're looking for. So we learned then after Noah's time that, in Adam's time, the world order was such that there was no meat eating given to Adam. But after the flood, we now learn that there is a new world order, a new oral Torah world order that says you can eat meat. And this new oral Torah world order, has to be connected to a written Torah that meat is food. So somehow, I guess it got written down. This new world oral Torah, or this new world order, does not reflect with the written Torah, which should be one and the same. Because the written Torah that we have still tells us that the original precept of eating food did not have anything about eating animals. So how can just a couple chapters, about 6 or 7 chapters later, the same written Torah, which was first given as an oral Torah to Adam, how can now the written Torah show up in Genesis chapter 9 telling Noah to eat something that contradicts the oral Torah given to Adam in the first place, which was the only Torah on earth? Because when Adam got the oral Torah, if you want to push some oral Torah, there was no written Torah instructing to go elsewhere. Or Adam would have said, but the written Torah says we can eat meat. And I just got a prophetic vision from you, or prophetic dream from you, Most High, telling me that in the future you are going to give a command to eat meat to Noah. So how come you are telling me now, with your original precept, this is my food, and now you're going to tell somebody else later that they can eat meat when they come off the boat, and then still turn around and tell Israelites, who you give your word to, that you don't change? Adam would have pushed questions like that. Only reason why Adam didn't push that kind of stuff is not just because it didn't happen, but it's because it is deception. If the earth was pure at the time when Adam was there, which I highly doubt that, then how could it be that Adam would not have tapped into that it was okay to eat meat? How could it be? But I already told you already, and you probably don't like it, but if the earth was pristine, if the earth was not corrupt, how somebody was in the garden skillful to tempt them as a serpent? Because tempting you in an expert kind of way, where just in a one-shot kind of temptation, they could just take down Adam and Eve like that without trying for a couple 100 years or however long. Look how much your enemies have to strategize to take you down. But just in one shot, you just came and take down Eve? You're telling me that there was perfection right there? No. The earth had already fallen, and that's why someone was skilled at how to take down the people. Because the earth was already corrupt, and they were skilled in the knowledge of good and evil. That's why they went direct, not to the tree of life, but direct to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because they knew how to utilize the tree of the knowledge of good and evil to take them down in one shot. The earth was already corrupt, and someone was practicing evil so long to be skilled in it. Malachi chapter 4 verse 5 and 6. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Most High. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. I'm sure everyone, when they read that kind of stuff, even from way back in the Christian church, has some kind of understanding that this is going to be a good thing, because we know that it seems fitting here for Elijah, because Elijah stood up against this whole Baal cult and so on, and to tell the children of Israel to turn back to the Most High, and you have turned their hearts back to them. So it seems fitting to say that Elijah is going to come to say this, to do this thing again. Now, if Elijah is going to come to turn the hearts of the people back, that means they are going to get something new, some new information, some fresh information, something revitalizing, something you're not used to. It may not necessarily be original on earth, but it will seem new to you, I should say, because we've gotten away from it. We don't know it. So the information that Elijah is going to have is going to be one that does not sound like what you get in your Christian church, don't sound like what you get in your mosque, it don't sound like what you get in your Israelite camp, because it is different from the understanding that is there. That means that if you are going to have some kind of, if you're going to stick to Elijah and really hear what Elijah is saying, it's going to sound different from what you are teaching. Elijah's not going to come and tell you everything the way you are getting it right now in your camp or your Christian church. It's going to sound different, that you're going to want to listen and not let people know you're listening to it. It's going to sound different, so you're going to be like, I don't know if I can accept this right now. It's just like I gotta test this, I gotta prove this, I gotta talk to somebody about this. Because it's different. He's turning hearts back, because hearts have removed from what truth is. There was no meat eating and killing of animals given as an instruction by the Most High to Adam or to anyone on earth or to anyone in the Torah. Even giving up their children, like I read in Jeremiah 32 and 35 and 1 Kings chapter 11, 7 and 8, I just showed to you, the Most High says these things didn't even come into my heart. That kind of animal sacrifice and flesh sacrifice and so on, which points to Calvary as a deception, the Most High says, I don't have anything to do with that. I don't talk about sons being given up for sacrifice, so you know I wouldn't be giving up my own son for a sacrifice in Calvary either. So all this stuff here about eating meat, which is linked to animal sacrifice, so you can become like the animal and take on the animal's powers like they did in ancient time. Or if the animal can run fast, I can run fast and meditate to get the power after I eat the animal that can run fast. I eat the ostrich so I can run fast. If I eat the ostrich and then I meditate, I can fly like the bird if I meditate after eating the bird. It's dumb. But it's also anti-Torah. And the snake swiveled and got that kind of information into your Torah with the knowledge of good and evil, which that tree of the knowledge of good and evil is just a science. It's a science of the knowledge of good and evil. It is a science of how to use evil but presenting it as good. That's how he got the woman to eat. He presented to her like it was a good idea. And so the Torah teaching of the wrong things and putting it in the text is the active part of the knowledge of, or the use of the science of good and evil. The science of how to blend and mesh the two together. To use evil and get people to do something that is evil by using good information and teaching good information, but don't let you understand that there's evil lurking there. Just like GMO stuff has you looking at a good fruit that was made in a factory or tainted somewhere with some chemicals, and it looks good, but there's evil in the food, and it will slowly poison you. The science of evil, or the science of the knowledge of the good and evil, or the tree of the knowledge of the good and evil, because it is an evil practice and knowledge that will grow throughout the years, throughout the centuries. But because it grows, you think it is good, because the Creator made stuff to grow in the first place, so you think it is good. No, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is the science and practice of how to do evil by using something good like the Torah to teach you that God said, or that the Creator said to Noah, eat these animals now, when the Most High said the herbs and the greeneries will be your food. That's what he told to Adam. Leviticus 17 and all these Noah's instructions to eat meat and so on is an anti-Torah teaching. Now, maybe I might continue this lesson because I've got a lot of other scriptures here that I want to talk about. But let me just read something quickly here from Leviticus chapter 17. Because I'm going to show, even from the curses in Deuteronomy, maybe I'll just split this to part 2. I'm going to show, even from the curses in Deuteronomy, that meat eating and animal sacrificing, which also leads to people sacrificing, like on Calvary, or Israelites offering their children in sacrifices in the Old Testament, I'm going to show that all that kind of stuff is in the curses of Deuteronomy and in the blessings of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and Leviticus chapter 26, that tells and exposes that eating of animals and sacrificing them have nothing to do with the Creator. So now, Leviticus 17 verse 2, speak unto Aaron and to the sons and his sons and all the children of Israel, and say, this is the thing which the Lord hath commanded, saying. And if you read the rest of the chapter, it's going to tell you that he's telling them to do these sacrifices and eat meat and so on. But it is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, where knowledge of good and evil, they're mingled together, they're twined together. Telling you now in verse 3, what man soever there be of the house of Israel that killeth an ox or lamb or goat and so on in the camp, and killeth it out of the camp, and bringeth it not unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, to offer an offering unto the Most High before the tabernacle of the Most High, blood shall be imputed unto that man. He has shed blood, and that man shall be cut off from among his people, making you feel that it is right, but you must do it before the Most High. You see how the knowledge of good, or the science of deception, the science of the knowledge of good and evil, makes you feel like the only thing that is wrong about it is that you didn't do it before the Most High, in the congregation of the Most High, or in the congregation of the Lord, like it might say. If you do it on your own, do it outside or whatever, it's wrong. But if you do it before the Most High, then it's all right to kill these animals, it's all right to sacrifice them, and it's all right to eat them. That is the science, the art, the skill, the knowledge of deception, or of the tree of good and evil. The Most High never commanded these things. The Torah has something wrong with it. And don't think I'm just starting this kind of stuff now. I've been sitting on this stuff and studying this stuff for about 2 years now, nearly. 2 years. So I got all kinds of answers, all kinds of scriptures. I've got many lessons I can do on this. So, like, you know, people are starting to ask. They were scared at first. They didn't know what to ask me. They're worried and they're scared. But now they're slowly starting to ask, but they're roundabout with it, because it's kind of, people are scared when you change their religious beliefs, and then you turn and say, I'm Israelite, I don't have religion. You do have religion. Because that's what I thought too, but this is religion. But people are scared to ask the questions. They're very scared because they've been teaching something else and believing something else for so long. When they hear something different like this, because how can we continue to teach the Torah if you're going to say all these things? So they are afraid to deal with it. But there's going to be more people that are going to rise up and start teaching these things. Because you are my witnesses, the Most High says. So who's going to witness of him and show the truth? The people that are the witnesses. And as we begin to learn more about who we are, we're going to speak the truth, even if it means demolishing what we thought was truth and taking down our whole construct of what we thought Torah was, and realize that that was just the model of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The real truth does not have you killing and slaying animals and drawing blood every time you need to worship God. The real truth does not curse you. Deuteronomy 28 says if you do these things in the first part of 28, it's going to be nice and good. You don't read of all this massive bloodshed and whatever. But the curses come after, and bloodshed is linked to curses. And notice, I mean, I'll do it in the next part. Like I said, I'll make a part 2 to this lesson. But notice here that when the Most High is like, I'm going to take away your corn and wine and so on, usually, and for the most part, he's saying that as a curse. Why? Because that's the kind of food you should eat. I'm not going to take away the meat out of your mouth, like the animal meat, with you trying to pull out and spit out the animal hair out of the side of your mouth. Because that's not what you should have been eating in the first place. So he's not removing that stuff. He's removing your real food, the corn and the wine and the oil. Oil is natural stuff. Like you squeeze that out of olives and so on. That's what he's taking, because that's your food from the herbs and so on. And he calls it not to rain as a part of your curse, because that's what he's taking away, because that's your food, and your food grows from the rain that falls and the sunshine and so on. I'll do a part 2 to this Leviticus 17 when I get around to it. Shalom.